we all understand there is a lot of anxiety, a lot of stress, complexity. And on the other hand, we understand there are processes which are emerging, strategies which are emerging, cultures which are changing. So there is a lot which is happening around. And therefore, it becomes crucial that there is a direction which is set for people, which is set for teams. And therefore, the role of leadership is of utmost importance. And to delve deeper into these issues, we are having the gracious presence of Mr. Arvind Mehrotra. So before I invite Mr. Arvind, I would like to briefly introduce him to all of you. Mr. Arvind Mehrotra is a member of the Board of Advisors, Risk and Technology Advisory, Strategic Advisory for Startup and MSME. He is a thought leader, strategic advisor helping mid-sized and startups to develop strategic plans, mitigate risks, and scale their businesses. He is an invited speaker at major events in the domain of finance, business, education, and technology. He's also a blogger and writes on management, technology, and strategy. He's having a very rich and diverse experience and has performed in various key roles like advisor strategy and services with CRMIT Solutions from July 20 till present, advisory board member of Creative Labs from March 19 till present, risk and technology advisor with Birlasoft till presently he's also there. He has been an executive vice president with NIIT Technologies also, and he is holding a PG in PGDM in Business Administration and Management from University of Michigan and MBE and BA from Delhi University. It is a privilege and an honor, sir, to have you here with us on this platform today. I'm sure students are going to benefit a lot from your talk, and they are eagerly waiting to listen from you. So without any further delay, I would request you to please address the students. Thank you. Over to you, Mr. Arvind.
Thank you and a very good morning. And yes, we are dealing with uncertain times, and uncertain times kind of create an opportunity for leaders to shine and to be visible. So I'm going to share a presentation, and this presentation will be made available to all of you. And I believe that that it is important that young minds should have certain references in their hand, and I'm sure you are reading lots, but this will possibly aid you and you can reflect on it whenever you need to. So I'm going to weave this story about the current situation, that the way that we are seeing it, and the enterprises that I've worked with. So in my past role, I've been president of a region and a global president at NIIT Technologies. But in the recent new avatar, and I quit a little early because I wanted to embrace the gig economy and feel the pressure of the gig economy, because when you are a president of a company, you don't feel the pressure because you put pressure, right? And whereas in the gig economy, every transaction that you do, the pressure is on you to know whether you have delivered the value that they were seeking, your customer was seeking. So one of the key things that you need to start viewing yourself is when you cross a competition threshold, we believe that we've arrived. The competition only starts then. But the competition is not about trying to compete to be the best, but the competition is all about trying to see of how you can engage with a broader set of minds, and how can you work with that broader set of minds and engage with them in a manner that you are able to solve real life problems. Because till you are in the educational system, you're dealing with pseudo problems that have occurred in the past. You read them as case studies. But when you take on a future role, and when you will take on projects work at your institute and with the industry, it will be very, very important that you don a new hat. So if I were to look at leadership is critical, and MBAs produces management, people who appreciate management controls, management ethics, management values, management systems, processes, okay, methodologies, ideas, concepts. But leadership is something that gets developed and honed over a period of time. And poor leadership can lead to a lot of people not willing to work with you. So the Gallup study has shown that 75% of the people leave because their leader was not encouraging, was a bad boss, essentially, and was not supportive. And obviously, no one wants to work for a boss or a leader who is not encouraging or not supportive. Okay. And the reason for this noise of the leadership is because most of the leaders who reach the top come because they get leadership mantles because of the success that they've had in the past. But they're not trained to be successful for the future. Whereas MBAs are trained to be leaders of the future and who can deal with the past and can be also successful for the future. So one advantage that you definitely have is in the leadership circle, 50 a dominant set of managers who are there or leaders who are there are not trained to be leaders or managers. So you can aspire to, that you can take on their roles or help them to move up. In under the Peter principle, make them irrelevant by moving them up and you become relevant. Okay. And the other thing that is happening is that most of the managers believe that, or leaders believe that they are better than rest of them. So they always rate themselves higher than what their team members or their colleagues will rate them. And this is a fallacy and this is a paradigm that it creates what we call in the social media, okay, an echo chamber. The echo chamber is that you always meet the right-minded people, the same-minded people, and the people who will keep saying, yes, sir, fantastic idea. No one challenges you. Okay. And because you don't get challenged, so what happens over a period of time is that you lose your ability to think, ability to adapt, and you become lethargic. And that is something that you need to worry about. So my take is that you should prepare yourself that A, leadership is critical, but B, also ready for that you do not become a manager. Because all the competition does is, and you've passed some competitive exam to be in this room and in this program, but competitiveness only creates managers. You know how to manage time, you know how to manage resources, you know how to manage knowledge, you know how to manage information that you receive. Okay. And you know who your competition is and how can you be just a little ahead of the others. So there is this story, right? Where a tiger comes in and so the people are asked, if the tiger is after you, what will you do? He says, I don't have to do much. I just have to be little better than the last guy who's behind me. If I'm little better than the last guy behind me, the tiger will focus on that guy, not on me. He will pounce on the last guy because that's an easy prey. And if the tiger moves beyond that, then I have to worry about that I'm not the last guy. So competition creates a mindset where you're just wanting to cross the threshold. Whereas leadership focuses on that you understand the cooperation, build an ecosystem where you thrive in that ecosystem, because leadership causes few things that you are not very comfortable with. It'll create restlessness, it'll create anxiety, and it'll create infiniteness. Pata nahi aage kya hoga, right? Whereas managerials are very happy. If I produce this, if I put this input, I will get that output. So they're very finite. They're very self-assured. They know that if I put a pressure on an individual, his response would be that either he will shape up or ship out, which means either he will resign or he will perform better. Okay. So my recommendation is that MBAs tend to produce more managers, but you need to invest in yourself to develop your leadership qualities. And when you are in your program, start collaborating and cooperating. Work with the professors to see of how you can get assigned to projects that they are doing, to research work that they are doing. Contribute to the society, contribute to the brand development of your organization, and to the batch itself. rather than just remaining exclusive. I'm just going to focus on my studies and just be ahead of the competition. Okay. The other thing which is important is that all leaders need certain mantras, right? It's a right way to say mantras, uh, and you could say philosophy, but I think in the current environment that we are in, mantras are better. Okay, आप इसका जाप करो. Okay, and there are certain principles that I learned from my clients, from my leaders, and my teachers, which I'm putting across. One of the biggest challenge for a leader is it's like mountain climbing. Okay, mountain climbing does not come with joy. Mountain climbing always comes with pain. And there is no pot of gold at the top of the Mount Everest. Even if it was, everyone has taken that gold away. Yet people aspire to climb the mountain because of the challenge, because of the risk, because of the uncertainty, because you want to put yourself, okay, into situations where you want to see, can I do better than what I am? But for a manager to put someone into the, say, you go and climb the mountain is an easy job. But for a leader, when he says you climb the mountain, he has to empathize the challenges that this person will go through and prepare that person for that arduous task. So it is important that you need to develop empathy, because empathy only creates a better understanding of the environment that you live and work and serve. Okay. Now, for an empathy to happen, right, you need to collaborate and you need to support collaboration. Now, collaboration has certain set of principles. You need to trust each other, right? You need to express your ideas and allow other people to express their ideas. You need to understand their ideas and possibly accept their ideas, okay? And learn from each other. Now, community-based learning is, and I'm sure COVID has taught you at least one thing, that you need to collaborate. Because when you were working, you were studying from home, you would have realized that you were not getting the value of the MBA because you were sitting inside and you could not study alone because no one could support you. And you could only go to your professor only so many times. Okay. And you did not have a support system in house. But when you are in the college environment, you know that collaborative study produces far better results. Concepts get cleared. You know one concept, someone knows another concept. So whatever you learn in the campus of while studying together, ensure that you retain that capability when you go out into the professional world. Okay. And the last is, and which is very, very important, you understand the word macho, right? Ki main hi ek, oh, everyone will come to me. And that leadership is very, very weak leadership, where everyone says, no, no, I am the only leader and no one else should be followed. And when we have such leadership, it only creates failures. Okay. So there has been a contrast of many leaders, and I'm not going to put it into a political perspective, but leaders who create collective collaboration and take people together, both the opposition and the party for, right? They succeed in executing their ideas because they put themselves in a vulnerable position. Okay. So they say, I don't know everything, and thus I'm vulnerable. I've never addressed this situation. I need support. I need ideas. So vulnerability is the first important element, saying I don't know everything. And I accept that even today because I'm working with startups and I learn so much from young professionals, okay, who possibly worship me. Yet, when I'm doing sessions and interactions with them, it's such a joy to have that openness and that freedom to express and exchange ideas. So one of the key things that you need to do is build and develop and guide your entire team to openness. And that you can start with yourself first. Become vulnerable. understand your limits, right? Understand what you don't know, right? And it is also exposing you to risks. Now, one of the biggest challenges that I have seen managers avoid risk, leaders enjoy risk. No manager will take a decision to climb Mount Everest. No manager. But every leader will take on that task of climbing the Mount Everest and even beyond, if there was a peak bigger than Mount Everest. So it's important that risk is inherent in leadership. Risk is not inherent in management. Managers are taught to avoid risk. Managers are taught to reduce risk. Whereas leaders thrive on risk and uncertainty. Okay. Now, if you know that you have certain principles, it is always good to build a culture and become part of an organization which adopts and develops a certain culture. Certain cultures can be toxic, but certain cultures are very flexible. But you as a management student and as a potential leader need to work with every kind of culture. Don't run away from a culture when you end up working in a setup which is power, centralized power, where everyone is trying to jostle for space. That is competition. Okay. Neither when you work for a person culture where his interests are greater than rest of the organization's interest, you would still have that situation. It's like your dad saying ki tum MBA kar lo, right? And I'm only going to sponsor your MBA, nothing else. Otherwise, और कुछ करना है तुम अपना पैसा खुद लगाओ, right? So it is a person culture also. So patriarchy in every household is a person culture. Your mother's views are not heard as much as your father's view. Yet in that family, right, you live collectively. You create space. And obviously the task culture or the bureaucracy culture are easy to set into. Okay. I've worked with all of them and I have learned the largest when I've worked with people who are personality driven, right? I've learned the least when it is bureaucratic driven. I've shined the best when there is a task culture, right? And I have not done very well when there is a power culture because I'm spending majority of my time in trying to position myself, right? And my own insecurities come out. Okay. So as I said, insecurities you need to live with rather than saying I need to address my insecurities. When you start addressing insecurities, you get trapped in becoming a manager rather than a leader. If there are any questions at this point of time, I'll be happy to take those. If not, I'll continue. So I have not seen any questions coming.
Like like to become a flexible in facing some kind of problems in the organization.
No, so look, every leader has a view and opinions. Okay. But as I said, you have to understand other people's point of view. You do not have to be adamant to your point of view. We all work with a certain set of data and a certain set of information and a certain set of experiences. Now, if someone brings a better light, a newer light, right? Or brings in more data or brings in more information or brings in more experiences, you have to onboard those experiences because they are better than yours, right? But however, if if it's constant, then you as a leader will have to take a decision. But then you have to be answerable to your decision because you are held by your decision because you hold the sword. People die by their sword. So it's not that leaders always get their decisions right. And the biggest lessons for leaders is when they make the wrong decisions. And leaders learn the least when they keep making the right decisions or they follow the right decisions. So leadership is something about where you live by what you practice. You can make mistakes, but you need to accept those mistakes and move on from there. Manager worries about why did I fail? Let me do analysis of why am I failing? And he gets into a very negative mindset. Or if he's succeeding, he will keep applying the same thing in every situation. Whereas a leader says, no, the situation was in this situation, this decision worked, but another situation, may I have to review my decision metrics. Is this clear? Should I move on?
One more thing I have to ask.
Yes, sure.
So as you mentioned that power culture and personal culture, and according to my knowledge, the leadership is about the personal influencing power. So how much the role of power and the position affects the leadership?
See, okay, so let me answer this since I have crossed many thresholds. The people that I worked in my first job, they continue to be engaged with me, okay, after 30 years. I have left the global president title 2 years ago and I've become an advisor. An advisor advises, he does not have operation control. Yet majority of the decisions that the CEOs of the firms that I work with 8 firms, right? They seek my opinion. So I have a greater power than sitting on that seat. Okay. So power is a dynamic thing. Okay. Power for self, power for a greater good of the society, or power to make a change. Your aspirations should change. You can only do so much for yourself. And if you are only about being powerful about yourself, you are called greedy. Okay. So bankers, right? People who play stocks money is thrown at them. And their only motivation in life is money. But after that, they burn out at the age of 35, and then they yet have 60 years or 50 years to live beyond that. And they really do not know what to do. And they struggle to coming back into this new society. But if you look at artists, so COVID created a fantastic situation for people who were gig workers. They were more assured. So if you see our top artists in Bollywood did not get assignments, but people who had come from theater got more assignments during COVID times because they adapted well. So Nawazuddin and the likes of those got more jobs than Salman Khan or a Shah Rukh Khan. Right? The branded people did not get all those jobs because they had a contract, they had a legal framework, they had certain power, and they had that entire team. So people were not interested. Okay?
Yes,
move
sir.
forward.
Thank you, sir. Yes, sir.
So the other is that while leaders work in a certain ecosystem, they must become strategic. And strategy is linked to where is the organization. It's not their own mantra, it is also the organization mantra. So I'll give an example. I'm working, when I started my job, I was the youngest printer publisher of a newspaper, computerized newspaper, Job Ads. Okay, which took on employment news, and we bet employment news. Okay. Now the advantage was there that I was a prospector there in that opportunity. And from there, we created a new organization called UDI Yellow Pages, which was the first in telecom outsourcing in India. We won the businesses against AT&T, Lab, Singapore Telecom, Italian Telecom, British Telecom. We won that business against all of them. Okay. And I learned huge things. We moved processes from mainframe to network-based computing. Okay. I used to be a finance student and loved IT after that. I have not moved from back to finance once I got into IT, because the answers that were coming in were far more beautiful. So there my role was of a prospector, but when I got into a listed firm, when I'm working for a listed firm, my role was that of an analyzer. Take decisions which are palatable to the organization, right? Understand the nature of the risk and do change the boundaries of the organization, but which is called managed risk. And it was all about culture changing. So when we had to initiate a change, it was huge amount of effort and energy that was required to make a change. We did many changes, but it was the buying process was a collective process. Okay. A defender is someone who wants to retain where you are. And I worked with that companies also. Okay. The disadvantage of a defender is that it is so internally driven, okay, that you do not adopt ideas from outside. So it is important that as an MBA, that you understand that a leader is to be strategic. And that strategy is never constant, and the strategy keeps changing. Now, it's an important conversation that culture and strategy go hand in hand. Successfully implemented strategy becomes a practice. A practice is taught to new, fresh employees and existing employees so that they become consistent to the organization value system. The value becomes a culture. But now, so the strategy is gone to become a culture. Now, when you tweak the culture strategy again, it means that the culture will undergo a change. Now, one of the biggest challenges that managers and leaders don't understand is that these two have to go hand in hand. Okay. So if you are an analyzer, then your culture will become risk averse. If you are a prospector, then you would be risk fear. You will not have risk. You will not fear risk. You will adopt risk more, take on more risks. Okay. Is that clear? Now, one way that you need to look at is what is going to be the future. And this is an interesting conversation. And I think you guys have to now understand that the future is brighter, but it has changed. COVID has changed the future. The future change was coming in because of obviously gig economy coming into play. Okay. It was because the economy was becoming more technology driven and more automation was coming in. Okay. It was largely because new rules of the organizations and countries were becoming self-serving. So the globalization was getting hit for economic reasons, but COVID accentuated the entire thing. COVID has forced everyone to look at financial exclusion and domestic agenda inclusion. Financial exclusion from a global market. Yet the global market tentacles are very strongly built. Because this is an ecosystem which will take huge amount of time to change. Because global supply chains don't get changed tomorrow. You can shut down an app, but you can't shut down the global supply chain from China, because your pharma industry will take a hit. Your manufacturing industry will take a hit. Your automotive industry will take a hit. Your electronics industry will take a hit because the parts come from China. Okay. So in my view, the way I see it is that a lot of small and beautiful companies will be required because they will be flexible and they will be adaptable. Because new ideas will come from these small is beautiful companies. They will become larger companies over a period of time. So go and do not fear in working in small companies because they create the largest opportunities for growth. Okay. So when you get project work or don't just look at a brand, look at the idea. Look at the problem that you are going to solve and the scope of work that you are going to get. The other is that I'm sure you would have heard that during COVID times, a lot of companies realized that their business models have undergone a change. So startups face that problem, and even larger enterprises face that problem. And many companies shut down because they felt that whatever they were doing was permanent. They will not change. Whereas the reality of the world is that a lot of organizations change. Even GE has changed over a period of time. General Electric. Okay. So the idea is that organizations' nature will change. Even government's nature has changed. Earlier होता था कि सरकारी नौकरी आप ले लो, उसके बाद आप रिटायर करोगे. During COVID, the government has introduced that after age of 50, we will introduce a check. Whether are you performing, whether you should continue or you should exit. They can retire you early. They'll give you the full benefits, but they can retire you early. Okay. So suddenly there is a change. So there is nothing called permanent, and people do find a new life. Okay. So when I did my MBA, right, I felt that I would be running companies, but I also had this back-end aspiration that I wanted to become an independent consultant or an advisor at some point in time. So I defined that the age of 55, I will switch. So I'll get about 5 years. It got delayed by a year and a half. But then nevertheless, at least I stuck to where I was heading. So if you do not start switching and saying what different I want to do, right, you will not understand how organization skill sets undergo a change. Okay. Now today, you as a young generation know that you are establishing the brand or destroying the brand value of many companies because customers rule. And the social media, right, allows that brand network effect to have a multiplier. Okay. So the value of the firms can come down. So if you look at Apple, the cost of the Apple asset, the financial assets of Apple in non-tangibles are much bigger than the tangible assets. So if you look at smaller apps, they make, Amazon makes losses at a group level, yet it's $1 trillion enterprise. Okay. Because they continue to invest in new ideas and ensure that they never become permanent in one model. And they keep opening up new markets. They keep investing in new markets. So there is this whole concept of future of work and future of employment and future of organizations. So one thing that is coming is that gig economies will become larger employment, or companies are hiring more non-permanent employees. They're taking more gig workers. So in IT, testing has reduced as a function. In the 1990s and early 2000, testing was a huge function. Every engineer would become a tester. Every MBA would want to become a business analyst and a functional tester. But that testing jobs have disappeared because now it can be outsourced because technology users have become very large. People who have retired can become functional users, functional testers. Okay, because you are only checking the navigation flow of the app. वो system कहाँ break कर रहा है. And NGOs are the largest non-employment opportunities. Okay, because the employer's role is changing based on the problems that they're solving. So COVID created suddenly food shortages. उससे पहले वो health and safety पे काम कर रहे थे. Suddenly workers की employment, food on the table, right, become more important than health and safety in the workplace. And lastly, it doesn't matter where you work, you are part of the global economy. So if, as long as your work is clear, your contribution is clear, you can work globally anywhere. So it is without boundaries. So the gig economy. So I do advisory work to an Australian firm sitting out, headquartered in Sydney. I do work with a Californian firm sitting out of San Francisco. And as soon as we finish, I have a call with San Francisco and their India Hyderabad headquarters at 11:30. For next 1 hour, I'll be with them. So it's boundaryless. I am sitting in Noida, the India base being in Hyderabad. We've met on video. I know the people, but I've never recently, even last 1.5 years, I've not met them physically. Okay. So that's the future. And you as leaders need to understand that you have to manage organizations like these and resources like this. So gone is the world of the British Empire, where जो सुपरवाइजर था वो उसके सामने उसका स्टाफ बैठता था और सुपरवाइजर का बॉस था वो उसके ऊपर बैठता था, like the clerk system. It is about individual contribution, and COVID has also taught that you don't need to come to office. People are diligent, they respect their work, they value their work, and they will deliver what is asked of them. Earlier, managers never trusted their employees. They wanted them in the office so that the work assigned to them, they could follow up and ensure that the work will be done. Okay. Now they want people in office for different reasons. Okay. Because that collaboration can be shorter. Now, one thing which is very, very critical is that, as I was talking to you, leaders have to become catalyst for change. And one key thing which has emerged in COVID times and pre-COVID times is that technology and learning is disrupting the market, because companies are not investing in you now. Companies are not investing in building, in training, huge training programs for their future employees. They believe that if they create a training platform, you will learn and spend your own time to hone your own skills. They want people who, because gig economy is giving them quick workers, contract workers, short-time workers, task-oriented workers. Whereas honing skills of internal employees takes huge amount of time. So if you look at the SMT training programs of, say, Unilever or Hindustan Levers or of the bigger boys, it's all 2 year. In NIIT, we used to run a 2-year training program for MBAs. Whereas now it is expected that you will start producing and become part of the business much earlier, which means that you have to learn on your own. Number one. Number two, if you're learning on your own, you would use technology. COVID has told you that the dependence on technology will be far greater, and you can do it remotely and you can do it at your own time. But one important thing that you have to learn is that leaders have to prepare, and you have to be prepared for future, because in tomorrow's world, you will not be hired based on your degree. That will be there because you've got an MBA, but it will be the kind of work that you've done. So if I look at my batchmates, one became the EVP for Axis Bank. I went into IT, someone went to NGO, someone went to association, someone went to professor. We charted our own destinies. We branched out from the same path because our portfolio of work that was demonstratable was very different. Our interests and our motivations were very different. So the future of the work is going to be based on work portfolio. But interestingly, the circle is coming back. Now you were impacting the brands, where you were giving online rating to the brand and the brand provider. The companies are going to look at your online reputation as a professional and as a worker, or as a leader or as a manager before they hire you. So build your online reputation also. Okay. And lastly, build your competency-based credentials, because that is going to be very, very critical. Okay. Now, I'm just going to give you, I do not know whether you've read this book called, I would recommend that you go and read this book, Seven Habits of Highly Effective People, written by Stephen Covey. And while Stephen talks about from an enterprise perspective, I have adopted this very differently. Principles remain broadly the same. Keep your customer in the center. So when you come out as managers or come out as leaders, come out of your MBA program, seek jobs where you can work with the customer. Because the frontline leadership understands what the customer needs are and demands are, how are they happy and why they are not happy, what works, what does not work. So work with the customer, keep the customer in the center. Once you have spent time with that, you can then move outside of that circle and work with people, partners, systems, processes, and so on and so forth. But that is the second phase in life. And the final phase in life is where I am today, is I only focus on circle of concern. And the circle of concern has to deal with strategy, competition, customer value, culture. Whereas when you start as a young leader, you always need to work with the customer. It could be an internal customer, it could be an external customer. But keep the customer in the center, focus on the circle of control, ignore the circle of concern. Because circle of concern will divert, distract you. But start working with the circle of influence. So work with people who can help you to get your job done better. Recognize them. Understand which are the people in your company or internally, which are the professors which are helping you to extend yourself, to do more, to give you more exposure, which are your colleagues which are allowing you to do so. So keep the idea, the customer, internal or external, central. Focus on what you can do, which is circle of control, and engage with the people of who have influence. And right now, stay away from circle of concern. Okay. So that would be my recommendation, because you need focus. Okay. Focus and determination to succeed. Now, leadership is uncharted. There is no way that I can define that if you take this route, you will be successful. It is not a Google map. Even Google map is not giving you today the real-time picture, right? Because if you are on your mobile and you would get that, you would be able to reach from one A place to B place. As I realized that I was driving my Mercedes and I was taken via a village, and I'm more worried about whether my Mercedes will survive that bumpy ride, right? Because Google was giving me directions without knowing what vehicle I was driving. So leadership is also about that same thing. Do not just blindly follow what other leaders have done in the past. They have, because what they have not explained are the environment, the constraints, the opportunities, the risks based on which the decisions were getting changed. Okay. So one thing that I can tell you for today is what you need to be prepared, and we were prepared for that, is that the current is uncertain and future is unknown. Take that as a permanent mantra for your life. That what you know is what you know, but a lot of things you don't know. So there is certain current will be unknown. What your professor will decide tomorrow, you do not know. What our country's leader will decide tomorrow, you do not know. What Supreme Court will decide on Kisans today, you do not know. So there is an uncertainty. Okay, we should accept that. And the other is the future is unknown. Who thought that Apple would be a device that you will talk on, or not an app? Apple would be that something that you will eat. Okay, so I'm sure, I don't know how many of you eat an apple a day. That is हमको मंत्रा वो सिखाया जाता था स्कूल में, कॉलेजेस में. I mean parents सिखाते थे. But today, if I talk of Apple, the first thing comes is phone, right? In your mind. That's the effect of the brand. The second thing that is important is you will be worried that COVID kab tak rahega? Who will be my future employer? Right? What will be my role? Please accept that it is accentuated ambiguity, but it creates an opportunity that you guys can best work with, is that you can adapt yourself to the uncertain future. So the key skill that will be required is to deal with ambiguity. And the key skill which will require to succeed is adaptability. So ambiguity, which means when you take on a role, do not go to your boss and say, boss, I do not understand. Google it and deal with that ambiguity yourself. Because in our life, we did not have Google. We had to go to the library. For you, the library and the resources are in your hand, in your mobile phone. The network is permanent here. In our times, we had to go to the library to deal with the ambiguity. In your times, it is in your hand. So you can deal with ambiguity much better. If you do not know the answer, use Google, root search, try to get the answers and say, this is what I've understood. So that when you go back, when you go into a work environment or you are doing a project that your industry is asking you to do, or your professors are asking you to do, you learn, okay? And then adapt once you get a feedback, okay? The last is important, is that what should be your core skills? And my core skills have remained, and I'm just elaborating that, be curious. Curiosity is important. Do not become a curiosity kills the cat. Right? Do not go into that level of curiosity. वो सिर्फ anxiety or heart attacks देगा. But be curious. And from curiosity, build collaboration. But as leader, have the courage to stand for your idea, to stand for your people, to stand for your customer, and to stand for your organization, and to stand for your family. So courage is the most essential thing. Don't hide behind social media and other people's tweets and forward tweets. Have the courage to say on your own thing. And what you do not accept, please do not forward. Do not share. Because then you are only a coward. Okay? And leaders are not cowards. Leaders stand for their own identity. If you think of collaboration, think of working together with everyone. Do not talk of excluding this guy and excluding that guy. Stop using this word, wo South Indian hai, wo North Indian hai, wo Eastern hai, wo Chinese hai, ye wo hai. You are doing a disservice to your own leadership and your own potential. Because that will frame your mind and it will set you for failure. Courage is a difficult thing to swallow. And if you have the courage, you will be able to deal in an uncharted territory. If you know, some person was left UK to come to India, and he went and discovered United States, which was Christopher Columbus. He created a bigger opportunity, but he had the courage to accept that he made a mistake, okay? But also recognized that everyone recognized that he created a much bigger opportunity, okay? And finally, the future of leadership is largely deep-rooted. But what people see is the trunk, the leaves, the branches, the flower, the fruit. फ्रूट का जो सीड निकलेगा वो जाके सॉइल में गिरेगा, वो सॉइल से किसी तरीके से ओवर अ पीरियड ऑफ टाइम वो सैपलिंग बनेगा, वो sapling से वो धीरे से plant बनेगा, and not all plants survive to become trees. And trees require roots. So your roots have to be very well established. And the roots are develop clearly deep domain skills, and recognize that you may not know all answers. So get some fresh thinking, get outside support also to get a bigger perspective. The second is when you are taking support from a wider net of people, right? You would be surprised and pleased that there will be new paths that you did not know of. And it will encourage you to deal with diversity better. But I do not know how many of you know this Steve Jobs story, that after he had launched 200 stores, he continued to go and stand in front of his stores to understand one simple thing: why are customers buying and why customers are not buying. And because of that, he changed the model, and Apple is the first company to become $1 trillion in valuation. Okay, a company which he started in Microsoft and left Microsoft. Microsoft never became $1 trillion company, still aspiring to be $1 trillion company. Okay, but Apple has achieved it. So it's important that you move and deal with the customer. As I said, keep the customer at the center. Understand why customers buy your product, services, your ideas, right? Engage with them and understand their insights. So with this, I'm going to pose certain questions for you. The questions are as follows. You as leaders, are you ready to find your jobs because you have certain skills, abilities, and knowledge? Or you will go and find your jobs because motivation is important? Because motivation is going to be the future differentiator. As I told you that we all as friends started from the same institution, we ended up doing different jobs because our motivations were different. And we had all different degrees of success. Today I'm blogging, I get more satisfaction in blogging, but I never thought myself to be a content writer when I started my MBA. Okay. Second is very, very important. What do you have to show for yourself? Do you have a portfolio of work that you have done in your MBA? Can you showcase that portfolio that this was the problem that was given and I solved this problem, or I analyzed this problem, or I appreciated this problem? So you may encounter many problems. Could you analyze a problem? Analyzing a problem itself is a big skill. And then trying to see of how can I improve it can be through continuous improvement or through innovation. So as young leaders, you need to be focused on building a portfolio of capabilities, which will be, it's like, why did actors, models survive an architect? Because the actors could show the portfolio of work. Models always get a portfolio of work done. And they go and say, this is how I look. This is what my left pose looks. This is my right pose looks. So portfolio work is what is missing from MBAs. So build your portfolio work. And finally, use LinkedIn and use these social medias, build network, because your networks are going to be your net worth. So today, most of the assignments that I've got are not, in none of the assignments I went and sought, I made a proposal. Because they wanted to work with me, I delivered a proposal post their interest in me. So your networks are your net worth. They will be helping you to build future revenues, future incomes, future valuation for yourself. Okay. And with this, I'm going to pause, and I think we have about 7-8 minutes. Please feel free to ask as many questions as you have.